No, I forgot to tell them that we were in the holy place this month, which for those of you who don't know is pastor's home office. No shoes allowed in here, so it's like the burning bush, kind of. Pastor, we're back. It's week 3 of August, and another episode of PB&J. I'm Jay, that's PB, and we are continuing our series called "Man, Do I Have a Story for You?" And
Vegetarian.
we had, kind of. We've had the privilege of kind of talking about faith, week 1 and belief. Last week was kind of an application of what it means to be a believer, I felt like, how we should be acting and representing the kingdom. This week, Pastor, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of a precursor to the little snack. So I separated the 2 parts I wanted to cover into 2 separate episodes, strictly to have a little snack for this month, so you don't have to watch TikToks. And so, Pastor, we're going to start in Luke 15. Okay. Now, Luke 15 encompasses kind of the idea of those who go astray of the kingdom, and even those who have never been in the kingdom and we're trying to bring in. Okay. And that all starts with the parable of the lost sheep in chapter 15, verse 1 through 7. I'm going to read it here. So, verse 1 is, all the tax collectors and sinners came to listen to Jesus, but the Pharisees and the experts in Moses' teachings complained, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Okay, so again, we're seeing another...
Oh, they're just hating because everybody's flocking to Jesus. You know what? He probably wasn't telling him, "Yes, sir, you're going to hell."
Yeah, well, shout out to Westboro Baptist. But verse 3, Jesus spoke to them using illustrations. So, again, in verse 4, suppose a man has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Mm-hmm. Doesn't he leave the 99 sheep grazing in the pasture and look for the lost sheep until he finds it? Mm-hmm. And when he finds it, he's happy. He puts that sheep on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says to them, "Let's celebrate, I have found my lost sheep." I can guarantee that there will be more happiness in heaven over one person who turns to God and changes the way he thinks and acts than over 99 people who already have turned to God and have his approval. Now, I personally think that's where Jesus gets a little gangster, okay? Because he looks the Pharisees right in the eyes and says, nobody cares how many laws you know, okay? Nobody cares how well you do what you quote-unquote do. We're much happier when the sinners that are here eating with me, quote-unquote, are being saved by my teachings, being saved by my disciples' teachings.
I mean, I get that.
But there's also a bigger part to that, is that those of us Christians and believers who pretend like we're better than those who don't believe, or too good for non-believers, and again, we talked about this with the Samaritan, right, going to the lowly places. There's a bigger reward, I believe, and Pastor, I feel like I've gotten this from you, that there's a bigger reward for those who are, I don't want to say are called because that sounds like God plays favorites, but for those who are willing to go to those places.
Well, but you got to understand, you can use the word call because Jesus himself said, "Many are called, but few are chosen."
Yes.
Now, it is not God who does the choosing.
Yeah.
So it would be better to say many are called, but few choose to follow that calling.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, we have to make a choice. Yeah. But
well, our entire life is a sum total of the when we're done, it's a sum total of the choices we've made.
But the obedience in kind of being the quote unquote shepherd, God pushes you, if you're listening, to go get those sheep that he's yearning for.
You know what bothers me?
Yeah.
Is when people say, "Well, I'm waiting on God to give me a burden for the lost." Okay, that's the dumbest thing somebody could say. Why do you need a burden for the lost? Do you not remember when you were lost and the hell that you were in and the help that you needed? So why do you have to have God put a burden? And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? He'll never do it.
No, he will not. But Pastor, also, not only does he rejoice when the lost are found, okay, and I know that this parable is more about the sinners that Jesus was sitting with, but even for us, when we go astray, when we, if you ever it's not really a popular term anymore, but become backslidden, where you've kind of...
Here's the phrase out of the book of Romans. It's the word harmatia, which means you end up missing the mark.
Yeah.
And it's an archery term. God has a path that he wants you to go, and you miss it.
Yeah. I mean, that can be what it is. But I also think that it's important that we know that God also meets us where we are. And meets you where you are. So if you're not necessarily a believer at the moment, that does not mean that God does not have his eye on you, that he's not sending people to come find you, and that he doesn't care. And, he will send somebody to meet you in your lowest place, just like he meets us at our highest place.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because, like Torrin said, he is the God of the hills and the God of the valleys.
Did Torrin say that?
A couple times.
Okay.
A couple times. Like 4 different versions of that song.
Okay.
But nonetheless, Pastor. So the next one, Pastor, is a story that you don't like me to relate to, but I relate very
See, you keep telling me what I do and don't like you relating to. No, let's get something clear.
Okay, let's hear it. I know they'd love to hear it.
Well, yeah, all the things you think I don't know about you.
No, I didn't say you didn't know.
Not that I don't know. How about all the things I haven't said anything to you about?
Sure, okay. This is not the place necessarily to do
Exactly. So, you don't like me to relate to this.
You don't like me to relate to this. We've had that conversation multiple times.
No, we've never had a conversation about this the way we need to have a conversation about this. Okay. So we're going to use this as a good moment to have this conversation. Let's go.
It's good to do some family therapy on people.
Come on, let's lock in.
This story is often called the prodigal son.
Okay, but see,
this is not. He's not prodigal.
Yeah, the son is not prodigal.
Yes, I did learn something from you. The son is not prodigal, and in my Bible they actually call this the parable of the lost son.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Okay. Wait a minute, before we go a little bit further.
Sure.
What is it about this that you think I don't like you to relate to? Boy, this is you.
Okay, yep, I was gonna say that if you just let me.
Oh, sorry, but see, you always let you host the show. You sit there.
I am the host. You are.
You sit there and you say, "Well, my dad doesn't like me too."
It's true. We've had this conversation on the podcast before.
What conversation did we have?
You don't enjoy that I have called myself the prodigal son.
Son,
that's not there's no problem with we're going to read the story. I'm going to then relate it to my life.
I didn't say I had a problem.
It's a way to witness. It's going to be good. It's going to be good.
But see, here's my problem with all that. I have never said to you, and if you can find it in the
you're talking about
if you can find it in the archives, when I've told you that I don't like you referring to yourself as a prodigal.
It may not have been a mic, but it was during a recording for sure. So we might be in a spot, that's okay.
No, here's the spot. It's just like you and your sibling. Y'all have these gaps in your brain.
It was not a negative thing. I was just saying that I was giving them a little layup to what's coming.
No, but my problem is you say you don't like me referring to myself as a prodigal. Yes, I don't care that you refer to yourself as a prodigal.
Okay.
You were lost. You did wander off the path.
I'm going to read the story. I'm going to read the story,
okay.
and then we'll let you get back on that soapbox when I get done. Okay.
I'm going to build a whole platform. Forget a soapbox.
Story of the lost son. Okay, and the father is the prodigal. Okay, that is the misnomer of this story, and we're going to glance over this quickly. So Jesus tells a story of a man who has 2 sons. And one son is ready to just get his money. He doesn't want to wait for dad to die. Give me my money and let me dip. Okay, so he gets that money, and then he leaves home. Okay, and when he leaves home, he decides to do everything against what his father had raised him to do.
Is that what you did to me? You took all my money and you left?
Well, we're going to call it wisdom rather than money, but sure.
Okay.
So he blew all the money. Realized that all his friends were only there because he was able to pay for the dinners and pay for the alcohol and pay for the good times. And as soon as that was gone, they were gone. And then he was with the pigs. And you could say he kind of went a little insane. And he was eating slop and all that stuff. And he realized, you know what? It's right
slop.
here.
No, it said he would have filled his belly with what the pigs were eating.
He was hungry.
He would have. That's how hungry he was. He would have done it. He didn't do it. He would have done it.
We weren't there, so we have no idea what this guy was doing. But no, Jesus does say that is the story, yes. Regardless, though, he realized in that moment that I need to go home. It's time for me to just admit my wrongdoings and come home. So when he came to his senses, he said, my father's hired men have more food than they can eat while I'm starving to death here. I'll go at once and I'll tell my father, I've sinned against heaven and you. I don't deserve to be called your son. Make me one of your hired men. Okay, so he pretty much going to ask his papa to make him a servant in his house because he no longer feels worthy of being part of the family. So he went home, and when he was in the distance, his dad saw him, and there's two ways his dad could handle this situation. Okay, his dad could have said, "Aha, I knew it. I knew you couldn't handle it. Blah blah blah. You will be a servant, or you'd be gone from here." Then he would have eaten the pig slop. But instead, his father, much like our heavenly Father, embraced him with open arms and said, "Welcome home." And instead of making him a servant, he threw a banquet for him, and all this stuff. And the other brother got jealous, and then it's another parallel to Cain and Abel, and people are, angry and blah blah blah. Nonetheless, the father chose to forgive his son and bring him home. And again, any good parent would never just disown their kid for going to make a bunch of worldly mistakes. But nonetheless, okay, they celebrated with the fattest calf and this and that. And again, his brother was pretty upset, but he'll get over it. That's just sibling rivalry 101.
Is it really sibling rivalry 101? Because there is a deeper meaning to that entire parable.
Well, you could argue.
No, there's no argument.
This is my argument.
Okay.
Because if I'm wrong, then it's an argument, and that's that. The other brother would be the Jews, and we are the non-believers, the prodigal, because they're the chosen ones. And they have never.
That's a good spin on it, but that's not where I was going.
Oh, well, yeah.
But that was good.
Okay.
I can see that.
Completely wrong.
You were. I can see that the synapses are synapsing.
Yes. What were you gonna? What was your?
Well, but if you look at the parable, you can relate it to the older brother being the elitist, the one who thinks, well, I've never done, and why are you, forgiving them, and why are you doing this, why are you doing so?
And is kind of, this kind of where the whole setup of this parable is Jesus talking to the Pharisees about that. So, I was going to get here. I got here much earlier than I thought I was going to. But what we're going to do here on PB&J is give a little bit of Jay's testimony for the sake of understanding a little bit more about the lost son. And so, as a pastor's kid, you grow up in church, okay, and all these stories. While I was putting this series, this month of episodes together, you start reading things and you realize like how much you didn't know, even though you knew it, you didn't know it when you read it with not only more mature understanding but a more focused approach to it. It wasn't just a checklist like it may have been for some of those years as a pastor's son, especially in my teenage years. So for the sake of the conversation, when you grow up in church, there is a you know what's right, you know what's wrong. And Jesus talks about how dangerous it is for you to have knowledge. It's better to be dumb than to have the knowledge, because when you have the knowledge, you're responsible for the knowledge and the wisdom. And so, some people like to go and try to make a testimony for themselves. They think it's necessary to witness and blah, blah, blah. I've never had anything happen to me. How could I preach it? That was not my philosophy. I was just using that as an example. I enjoyed the ability that I had to kind of live in both worlds for a long time. And then as time goes on, I never stopped going to church. I showed up every Sunday, and I did my duties to my church and to my congregation, whether it be the sound or singing or collecting the offering or whatever it may have been. But you're not really in it. You're just kind of sitting there going through the motions, and then when you get out of those double-sided doors, after service, you're back into the cursing and the popular music, secular music, however you want to call it, and you do all those things. Then obviously, as you continue, I obviously thought I could kind of drown out the conviction that I had, with alcohol, with no hard drugs, but drugs nonetheless, and things like that to kind of again dull the senses and dull the noise, which of course was the Spirit telling me, hey, come on. But when it all came crashing down, when Xavier was announced to me, and your world begins to spin very much, you realize the Earth is spinning, and it spins very fast. It felt kind of like the lost son sitting in the pig pen, and that's not a knock on my son's mother or any of that, but it is like, oh, this is it. This is the turning point. Do I eat the slop or do I go home? And obviously, we talked about it with Pastor Erica, I think earlier this year. I think it was that episode, or maybe her previous appearance on the show, but there was a lot of ups and downs to coming home and acknowledging my sin, and acknowledging my fall from grace a little bit, and it humbles you and it gets you right. But the one thing that helps an individual be able to be honest and really change is an accepting group of believers. And I think, Pastor, I could be wrong, but it might be in Matthew. Maybe Matthew, it might be, I believe it's Matthew, where they talk about if there's another believer, you confront him one-on-one, and then if not, you bring a couple others, and then if not, good luck. Pastor, because this is a story about a father and a son, I know Pastor was obviously, as any of you who listen who actually know Pastor Brian, and if you have gotten to know him throughout this podcast, where you just heard that 5-minute intro to the story of the lost son, he was disappointed he wasn't, but he never made me feel like I was too far gone, to where I never felt disowned. I never felt, I knew he was disappointed, but I never felt an overwhelming sense of like, my dad doesn't want to be around me, my dad doesn't care. And as the lost son may have seen, and I think some people around me may have also thought, what is Pastor doing? This is not what he said for all those years would happen if Justice had a child out of wedlock. And but
no, I never said that to people.
Well,
I said that to you.
Sure. Well,
yeah,
things get leaked out, and I mean, you get it. But Pastor, you obviously, like the Father in this story, and like the Heavenly Father, arms stretched open, and that obviously leads to what we now have as PB&J, and 2 messages on 2 back-to-back Father's Days, and everything else that we are now staring down the barrel of as the journey continues. But Pastor, that is why I relate to the story, and I think that is a good implication of what it can look like, and that it's not just a story Jesus told, but it can be real life if you allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to do that. So.
Yeah, that's true. But you know what I've always thought of? Scripture says we may deny him, but he can't deny us.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, who am I if, my kid messes up, that I can't give him grace, same grace I've received, same grace anybody else has received? Yeah. I didn't need to tell you that you screwed up. You knew you screwed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't need to, add insult to injury. That wasn't going to help. What I wanted was my kid back.
Yeah.
And, one day when you're old enough, we'll talk about my side of this story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, again, not on PB&J.
Yeah.
But,
come on. I think it'd be fun.
It'd be probably the highest rated video of all time. But,
yeah. But again, we're talking about, restoration, reconciliation, at its highest form.
And I think the big thing, and for this story, to bring it all back together, is the son was he was humbled by the experience, but he was humble enough to say, like, I know that I and this is how we should be when we come to salvation. I am not worthy of your,
anything.
I'm not worthy to be your.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't ever want to go as far as say we're not worthy to be your son. In our instance, when you are a parent, again, that's tough, like you said, to completely ostracize your kid. But like, for you to be humble enough to say, like, that's where true healing and true retribution can happen, because you are humble enough to say, like, this can't be how the story ends. This can't be who I am.
You think I was going to lose you to the devil?
No, I didn't. But I also had to be humble enough, and this, just like the lost son and the prodigal father, I had to be humble enough to say, hey, all right, it's time to wake up. It's time to go do your thing. And part of that was also for Xavier, and I wanted to be obviously the best father I could be for my son. So, but yeah, so that is the story of the lost son. That is the story of the lost sheep. That is the story of how God loves us and how God pursues us, right? And He is rejoiced when you come back home, as any good parent would. So, Pastor, that is episode 3 of August.
Okay.
We have one more episode on YouTube this month, and then, of course, the Spotify listeners get their little snack, which will be kind of the same idea, which will be forgiveness, which we'll talk about what Jesus talks about with forgiveness here in the little snack. But we have one more. Oh boy, do I have a story for you. And until then, go and grow with purpose. Peace.